I am super honored to be here today. One of the things that's really interesting is that I'm here to talk about habit technique. And so I know that we've had a lot of speaking opportunities today. We've learned a lot of things in terms of the context of habits, but what are practitioners doing? And I have the privilege of being able to describe one of our habit loops in a little bit of detail because we have some limited time. So I have a question to kick us off, which is, how many here have created an unbelievable, fantastic habit loop? Oh, a couple people. All right. I want to get your names later. We're all still just amateurs. There's so much to learn. And as we're starting to investigate the space and explore what is possible, we're learning new things every single day. And what I'm hoping to do is show you a little bit of what we've learned and what we continue to struggle with. I just want to start off that, again, we've been invited, and we're a little bit of an off name. We're Expedia. We are the old dog. And so I can't help but say, can you teach an old dog new tricks? But what a cliche. I don't want to start off that way. The question is that we've been around for 16 years. We haven't had that dramatic change. We just had our facelift for the first time. Yesterday, we introduced the homepage. That homepage had not been refreshed since 2002, to give you a sense of that time. There's a kid back there. I think our homepage was older than that kid. I don't see him anymore. But he was like 14 years old. I was like, what's going on here? Okay, so we are learning. We are churning out migrating to a new platform. And so there are lots of techniques that we're starting to explore as we are able to test and learn and be more agile in regards to our product development. So you will see lots of new things from Expedia. You should already see approximately 70 to 80 versions of our site running live at any given point in time around the world. And we're culling and we're coming up with new versions of our site every single day. And the source of these versions are competitive analysis, some ideas from some product managers, as well as just looking at users and understanding what is it that they want. One of the great things about being in the internet is that you have a chance to prove yourself every single day. And so the great thing about Test and Learn, the great thing about having 70 or 80 versions of our site up online is that any one of those things can be a spectacular winner. And any one of those things can be a spectacular loser. And the great thing is you can just kill the losers and keep the winners. And so nobody knows the difference except for the people who've experienced it. And before we get started, I want to talk about three things that you need to know before I talk about habit technique. One is that Expedia is a data product. Now, what do I mean by that? So if you were to take every single flight, fare that is, every single hotel room rate, every single car rate, and every single activity price, and you were to lay it out as a set of nodes, you would have the travel graph. Now, how big is this graph? How many prices are there in the real world? Now, if you think you have an answer, a mathematical answer in your head, you are absolutely wrong because the space is near infinite. Let me give you an example. So if we just focus on air, which is what we were known for, it's a very famous computer science problem, which is if you start to think about how many fares we offer, and I want to give you a case study, which is in November, I decided to go to Thailand in December. So I knew that I wanted to go sometime in December. There was going to be a little bit of slowness in the year. I wanted to get away, and I wanted to make it a long enough trip that I'd enjoy it. So as I started thinking about this trip, there's lots of combinations that go through my head. So as I'm starting to think about, how many date combinations are there in December? Does anyone know the answer? It's 30 days in December, so that is the constrained, set of dates. How many combinations of date pairs can I come up with for the month of December alone? I'm at Stanford. I know someone has the answer here. Anybody? Okay, so the answer is 435. So it is just 30 factorial divided by 30 minus 2 factorial times 2 factorial, 435. Now, if I add 2 airports to Thailand, does somebody know the number of combinations of date pairs that I can explore in the month of December? It's 4,005. Okay, so 4,005 combinations. Now, for every single one of these combinations, there are approximately 10 billion routes if I only take one stop. One stop, 10 billion combinations. What happens if there's 2 stops? Well, now everything explodes. My head explodes. Everything goes wrong. Remember, we have to calculate all these things within about 2 seconds. 2 seconds, we have to come up with what are the calculations. What do we think that you want to see? What are all the things that you want to view and explore? And we have to make that decision. Now, here's a question for you. If I were to think as a normal consumer, and I'm starting to think about December, and I want to go to Thailand, and there's three airports that I might want to get to, and there's 10 billion combinations for me to explore, how much time does it require for me to explore all of these different options? And I don't mean the 10 billion options, just the 435 date combinations that are available in the original math that I presented. So if you think that it takes you about 5 minutes to explore every single combination, that means you can get through 20 an hour, and that means you can get through, maybe in one day, you can get through all the single combinations. But there's a problem, and the problem is this, is that prices change nearly every minute. So as you're starting to think about this, you say, well, at what point do I need to start over and start from the beginning, starting with date combination 1? And what you realize is that this problem cannot be solved just through traditional methods. And so as we start to think about what is the time that's required to look through all those combinations, it's not very, very easy. So we try to make it easy by actually showing you patterns of what people are buying. So when you look at actually our sort results, when you actually look at our search results, what we're trying to do is actually show you that other combinations that other people have bought. So if you come to our site, we're running a test where we have recommendations on the site. We'll show you different date combinations and prices that might appear under the combinations that are related to your search. So again, what we're doing is we're building a graph. We're showing the connections in the graph because usually, as if you trigger one behavior, you can show the correlation to another behavior. And then based on booking behavior, we have signal to be able to tell you what's relevant. The second thing for you to know is that we're a marketplace. So everyone recognizes part of what this graphic actually represents is that you'll see that the hook loop is part of this graphic. And you'll see that they're back-to-back hook loops together. Now, actually, it doesn't make logical sense, but my designer said that this would look way better if we just combined it into a figure eight. And so the back-to-back figure eights. Now, the part that I just want to explain is that we're a two-sided marketplace. So while we talk a little bit about technique in regards to how do you create consumer habits, there's the other side of the equation for us, which is how do we create habits for the merchant side of the business. And when those two things can connect in a marketplace where the rewards are mutual for both, that's when we know we're onto something. So what we're trying to accomplish is a little bit more complicated, a little bit more sophisticated, but the rewards are incredible, and we're going for it. And again, as you start to think about this in just higher fidelity, this is the hook model. And then this is the hook model the other way. Okay, the third thing is that as we're starting to think about a lot of the things that we do, because we're a data product, we're thinking about infrastructure. And because we're thinking about infrastructure, we have to be a little bit more focused in the future. And so we're paying attention. And at CES, and as we got in terms of one of our presentations today, wearables seems to be the hot thing and the thing that everyone's paying attention to. And that's something that we're paying attention to very, very closely at Expedia. And like many of you in the audience, we're tinkering around with the glass. And so if you come to my office, I will force you to wear it. And then what I typically do is time, at what point will you give it back? I usually say, you can keep it for overnight. And people insist, no, you can have it back. And I don't know how other people feel in the audience in regards to glass. Whether or not you believe it is the right product or it's just a V1, it's going to get better, I think that the idea that in the near future we're all going to be wearing the internet is a powerful idea. And the reason why it's such a powerful idea is that, think about it for a second, is you have access to almost all human knowledge, and you don't have to go to your phone. And that's a big, big idea. And because of that, we think that there's going to be relentless investment in this category. Relentless. So what does it mean for a company like us, like Expedia, that grew up on the web, traditional PCs, traditional HTML, traditional websites? If you start to think about what Expedia is, we're like the restaurant business. People come to us. We have to tell them where our location is, and they come to our restaurant. But in the future, as we start to think about, what do wearables represent, it's a completely different ballgame. So again, the key things is no HTML, there's no mouse, and the big thing is in the future, there are no sessions. So a lot of what we focus on today on the website is really thinking about, hey, when you're in a session, what happens? What is that activity that happens in that short period of time while you're on the site? But as we're starting to think about the future, what we're realizing is that that's a limited, very, very limited view into the activity of users. What we need to do is go beyond that and track What are they doing outside of that? Not in the general web, but in travel alone. And so one fun fact is that, people, consumers, before they buy travel, they typically will search 48 times before they actually make a purchase decision. 48 times. Now, what's incredible about this is the rate at which that's accelerating. It was only about 5 years ago when that number was close to 15. So why is that? Why are people searching more than ever before, shopping more than ever before? Well, there's more access to available information, and I think also some of the logic in regards to what is the reward of being able to find infinite amounts of travel opportunities and options, that's playing a role in regards to this number. Okay, so what is it about the Google Glass that makes it unusable? One of the reasons why I think it's very, very difficult is that people want to use a glass as a pull model. Now, what do I mean by that? Is that when you go to a laptop, you go to your phone, in order to get information, you have to type it in. You have to query it. And so a lot of companies are focused on how do I make it easier to pull the information that I want? And we would posit something different. After playing with these devices and understanding what they can do, we would posit that actually what you have to do is you have to transform your service to a push service. The value that you have is not a restaurant. The value you have is a delivery service. You need to bring the food to them. Wherever they are in that context, what they order, and customize the way they like it. So what does that look like? And by the way, I'm sure a lot of you, if you are avid travelers, I'm sure almost everyone in this room has traveled at least once. Why is it that when you sit down, you do your research, you write it down, you write down all the things that you want to look at, all the things that you want to see, all the research you've put into it, and you can't access it? You have to carry it around in a binder. If you watch people travel, they still have a Frommer's, right? They still have this book. Why wouldn't they just take their internet and then do a search? Because it's too cumbersome. They want all of those details at their fingertips. And again, as you start to think about the model, a push model makes a lot of sense in this context. Why not push them the information that they need in the context of how they're exploring the world and in the course of their travels? Okay. So as we start to think about technique, again, one of the things that we do is that we try to break up every single problem into more atomic units. And what we're trying to do is understand how to make small changes every single day, make a set of investments, and as some investments don't work out, we kill it. Other investments do work out, we start to double down. And so that's the technique that I think many of you in this audience use. One of the things that's really a privilege at working at Expedia is because of our global traffic and our footprint all around the world, we get to see things live and die every single day at an incredible velocity. Okay, so I'm going to talk about one particular feature. And that feature, some of you may have seen if you've come to our website. How many of you here have heard of Scratchpad? Okay, a couple of people. So if you haven't, I would ask you guys to come to Expedia and check out this feature. Now, let me tell you a little bit about its origins. If you're in lab, and I'm going to actually show you a video of somebody who I think represents their actual shopping behavior. It takes people about 90 seconds to forget everything they've seen. Now, that seems incredible, right? You say, well, no, that can't be possible. 90 seconds? Okay, this is not scientific. It's just more of it's an idea as you start to watch people shop. The more and more things they look at, the fewer and fewer things they actually remember. So to try to solve for that, what you travelers will do is that they'll write it down. They'll write it down in a notebook in regards to the prices that they've seen, the flights that they've seen, the hotel rooms that they've seen. And then they'll scratch things out as prices change. So they'll take the notebook, and you'll see people in the lab. They'll write things down, they'll scratch things out, they'll write new things, and they'll keep this notebook. Then what they do is that as they pare it down to the flights and hotels that they like, they'll get on the computer, they'll type in an email, and then they'll send it to a friend. And then typically what ends up happening is that the friend will look at the prices. The prices won't be the same as what was on the site. So they'll go off and they'll do their own shopping. And so then the cycle begins again. And so that's typically how it's done today. So we built Scratchpad really designed to solve the problem. Now the thing about Scratchpad is we built it server-side instead of as a cookie solution. Now why did we do that? Because we had habit loops in mind. What we wanted to do was actually invest in an infrastructure that will allow us to push out the relevant information when users needed it. Now, we already had some clues in regards to what are some of the things that consumers might be looking for when they come to the site. What are the things that we might want to push to them based on those things that they actually pull? So Scratchpad is designed to give us total recall. And so this is a short little video of what a typical user session might look like. So after you search, You know, someone might just click on a number of different things. They see a hotel that they like. This is someone searching for a certain island resort. They're looking around. They're clicking. By the way, some of these people will switch back and forth. We'll check some email. We'll come back. They might be on a mobile device. Now they see some things that they might like on their mobile device on the way to the bus, and then they come back home. And now, what is it that they actually saved? What is it that they actually looked at? How many people can remember? Well, Scratchpad does. Remembers everything. Whatever you did on your mobile device, whatever you did on your PC, we have a full record. What else we do is that we keep a record, and we turn on the notes so that ultimately we can push you your notes in a 24-hour cycle time. Now, why did we pick a 24-hour cycle time? We picked the 24-hour cycle time because what we wanted to do was actually just see if we can experiment. Can we bring users back to the site in a faster way with Scratchpad in a 24-hour cycle? You have to set some sort of time frame. And what we discovered was the time frame that we picked was completely wrong. Now, what do I mean by that? Is that we thought, and here was our thinking behind this, a thesis behind this, is that after people search and shop, 24 hours is a reasonable expectation for them to come back to the site. And what we started to realize as we launched this feature is that people want to come back to the site when they're in the shopping mode way more often. And Scratchpad was not going fast enough. So that was an incredible aha as we launched this feature, and we're starting to learn some lessons. And again, as you start to think about what are these notifications that allow you to shop again, when you turn on the notes, and again, you have to opt into the notes, that's when we send you out a list of all the things that you've looked at. So the list is completely relevant because it's things that you shop, it's things that you viewed. So let's actually put this in Near's hook framework, just so that we can focus on technique. So as we think about triggers, what will trigger you to want to travel? Well, think about in your own lives and think about in your own day-to-day, what is it that makes you want to dream, makes you want to go to New York, makes you want to go to Hawaii? There's a number of different things. There could be a commercial, a conversation with a friend, a person telling you a story about their time at a resort, a hotel room, a call to a family member. There's so many things that can be that trigger that makes you want to travel. Now, two, you come to Expedia, and the action that we ask you to do, it's very, very simple, which is search, shop, or just view. Right? That's a very, very simple action that everybody does on our site, and they're very used to it. The reward is just interesting options. So we show you interesting options in terms of fares for flights, hotel rooms for hotel, prices and different ways that things that you might do in a particular city, or different prices that you might want to pay at a hotel, and those prices are associated with the size of the room, whether you might get a suite, whether you might get 2 rooms that are adjoining, whether you might get a smaller room, or you might get a bigger room. So those are interesting options. That is your reward. And then what is the action? What is the investment? The action is the investment. So this was actually controversial. When we started thinking about the habit loop, one of the things that's very explicit, if you look at all of Near's models, is that people typically pick an investment that's different than the action. So why is it that we picked an investment that's equal to the action? Because we wanted to keep it simple. Now, is this the right decision? Shouldn't we have said, hey, you should favorite the things that you want to keep a memory of, to log those things so that we can treat them differently, that we can treat them in a very, very special way? So that was controversial, but we decided to go with what was easiest. And there's always room to go back and then to refine and refactor what the investment is over time. So we made this as a conscientious decision. And then the new trigger is now driven by the notification, which again is now in the form of email. And we're hooking it up to our push notification service so that if you don't want to do it through email, you just want to push, that would be available for you. Okay, so that is the basis for the consumer habit of the hook model. So what are our opportunities? They're vast, and there's a lot of questions for us. As we're starting to think about the Google Glass, we've been designing with no HTML in mind. So as you start thinking about no HTML, what is it that we're sending you? We're sending you a little micro piece of data. And so in this particular example, if someone has searched on a flight from San Francisco to Miami, and I know that there's 10 billion combinations, you've only looked at 2 of them, and a new one becomes available through a price change or through a veil change, should I send that to you? Probably yes. But then there's a question, which is at what pace there can be a price change every single minute. At what pace should I send you these notifications? Creating this loop to come back to the site. Now, you might have a simplistic answer. You might say, hey, I don't want to be bothered with all these notifications. I'd like slower, and then I'd like to speed it up. Actually, what we knew that we had to do was design it for context. So I'll give you an example. There is no one-size-fits-all when you start to think about the pace. The reason why there's no one-size-fits-all, and at least in our industry, is that if your flight is canceled, you want rapid-fire access to 24-hour live data about different flight options that might become available for you. Why? Because a lot of you, if you're stuck in Kansas City, don't want to sleep in Kansas City. You want to get back to San Francisco where your friends and family are. You want to go back to your real life. So this is really important for you to have access to. Now, if you are looking for a trip that is 4 months out, then the pace at which we send you these notifications can be a lot slower. But even then, as you start to think about the art of notifications, the pace at which you want to send them, should I make a decision based on maybe the mood that you're in? I mean, we're in the age of wearables. Don't I have more context in regards to the things that you want? Can't I speed up the pace when I think you want it and slow it down? That's the art, and that's one of the things that we're trying to discover. 2 is that right now our notifications are all driven off things that you've looked at. But there's a whole new space for us, which is really thinking about, can we take our recommendations technology and point it at the things that you've shopped for so that we can introduce you to things that you haven't seen or yet seen? 3 is, should we shop for and drive engagement? So in this particular example, the action that we might present to you is actually that you should view more. You should shop again. And why would we do that? We would actually shop it again because that's the investment phase. So we've sent the trigger, and now we are asking you to take an action. That action will now create an investment, and we start the cycle over again. But is that the right thing to do? Maybe what we want to do is actually ask you to buy it now. Because again, that's how we make money, and maybe that's actually what you want. Maybe what you want to do is now that you have this new fare, you want to buy. So there's lots of decisions that we have to do in order to optimize this experience. So in this new world, it's all about live connections, 24-hour a day, live connections with the consumer. And that just means that there's a whole new field of science for us to master. The second loop, which is suppliers, there's a question for us, which is if we know we're starting to invest in creating these habits for consumers, how do our suppliers actually fit in? And so we've started thinking about what those experiences look like, the dashboards that they might have. And ultimately, we could imagine experiences, again, going back to Google Glass, we're presenting them live data about what people are looking at on their site, on the site right now. And if we know that there's 14 people that are viewing your hotel, do you have an opportunity right now to make them a promotional offer? Can I create a habit for the supplier where their business is the habit, creating revenue is the habit? And again, that these promotions and deals create rewards for the consumer. So as you start to think about those 2 loops working together, this might be an example of creating that reward. Okay, so we have not learned anything yet. We've just put together the first hook, and we're starting to optimize. It's still early, and we're just beginning. And in this new world, while we are the old dog, we're all still young pups. I'm sorry, my content team made me say that. So. And every time someone travels, we have an opportunity to make a better place. And we think that that is a habit worth building. Thank you very much. Yes, I have time for questions. Any questions in the audience? Oh, right there. Yeah, so the question is, are we showing too many options? Actually, the math that I was reviewing was just the number of options you can calculate using 30 days of date pairs and 3 airports. So if you had to just do the mathematical combinations, that's the total number of combinations. The number of searches that a user will actually do is only a subset of that 4,005. Typically, they'll do 48, and a lot of the 48 is the same query over and over again just to see if the prices have changed. Question over here.
I'm an avid Expedia user for business travel.
Awesome.
I have a question. So I noticed that you don't track me until the very end of the experience as to whether I'm personal or business, right? It's a follow-on question. I'm curious how you might create habits differently for business travelers versus the leisure traveler, and whether that should be at the front end of the experience.
That's a great question. More to come. I'll tell you that there's so much for us to do in terms of personalization and making the shopping experience easier. We're just at the beginning. And so I think that's one of the most obvious use cases for us to solve. And the reason why it's one of the most obvious use cases for us to solve is that people will self-select into that very, very quickly just by date pairs. So what do I mean by date pairs? People typically don't take vacation from Monday to Thursday. They just don't. They're traveling for business. And also you see the repeat behavior over time. So it's very easy to tell that someone's on a business trip. So what are the things that we'll do? Well, remains to be seen. But I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised.
So one question.
Question over there.
So fundamentally, I think why do you think people would come to Expedia versus like TripAdvisor, like a Travelocity or a Priceline? I think these are great if they're engaged with you, but do you see and this is a question, I guess, Uber versus Lyft versus, how do you sell value and trust before you do all these things for push notifications?
Yeah, so remember, the hook loop is just helping people who have already come to our site in regards to their shopping behaviors. And if you're on Travelocity, I don't know if people know in the audience, but we've taken over their site. So I'm just as happy if you go to Travelocity. And then our competitive advantage is we're a data product. And the way data products work is the more data you have, the more you can utilize it as a weapon to help the consumer in regards to finding what they're looking for. One more.
Hi. One question that I have is, what are the organizational changes that you're doing in your team and within Expedia as you're shifting the product to work around habits loop more and focus on the two-sided network effects? Do you structure your teams different, all that good stuff?
Yeah, so the way that we typically do investments at Expedia is that if it's a brand new idea, we might fund up a small team to go do that. And when I say small, I mean really small. And that's to force an issue, to force frugality, and to really get product managers, engineers, and designers to really think about the problem and to invest in one proof point that we think is worth investing in. And so typically we don't do massive reorganizations. We just have these little investments and little seeds. And these seeds can grow up to be A rounds, and those A rounds can grow up to be B rounds, and so on and so forth. And so Scratchpad is one of the investments that we've made that has started to blossom. But the direction in which you can go is kind of unlimited. But there is no org change that goes along with it. Okay, well, thank you very much.